fabulous Dale Evans, who of course was famous for her TV and movie role during the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, especially alongside her husband, Roy Rogers.
She was the radiant cowgirl with a golden voice and a smile America trusted. But behind the rhinestones and saddle was a storm she kept buried for decades. Dale Evans lived a life many envied: fame, faith, a loving family, and an iconic marriage. But just before her death, she unveiled a truth that left a deep crack in that perfect picture. What could a woman so admired carry in silence for so long? What did she finally confess about the man millions adored? A legacy of love, loss, and unbearable choices waited in the shadows. And when she finally spoke, it wasn't just heartbreaking, it changed everything. But what exactly did she reveal? A troubled beginning. Before she became America's beloved Queen of the West, Dale Evans was born as Frances Octavia Smith in Uvalde, Texas. Her early years were marked by instability and hardship. After her parents' separation, young Frances was sent to live with her uncle, Dr. L.D. Massey, a physician in Osceola, Arkansas. Though her uncle hoped to provide her with a stable environment, Frances's life remained far from secure. The emotional distance from her parents and constant upheaval shaped her into a resilient but emotionally scarred young girl. At just 14 years old, Frances made a life-altering decision. She eloped with a man named Thomas Frederick Fox. By the age of 15, she gave birth to their son, Thomas Fox Jr. What began as an impulsive attempt to create a new life quickly turned into heartbreak. Her young husband abandoned her within a year, leaving Frances a single teenage mother in Memphis, Tennessee. The burden of caring for a child at such a young age, while navigating a world of limited opportunities, became the defining struggle of her adolescence. She became Frances, a single mother trying to get by in Memphis and make a better life. She sang, played the piano, and worked part-time at WMC and WREs as she slowly built up her reputation or notoriety and found her way into the field of performing. These performances were the early steps to a career that would become nationally famous. There was, however, great pressure. She was a mother at a young age alone, lacking financially and lacking in emotional support, while breaking into a ruthless entertainment industry. In spite of her personal chaos, Frances has put up an amazing fight. The fact that she was once a young, abandoned mother will determine her worldview and move her to sympathy later during public advocacy. At that moment, however, hers was the stigma of teen motherhood that had to be concealed. Years later, when Hollywood came calling, studios would force her to deny her son and pretend he was her younger brother, a lie that would haunt her for decades. Yet, in these early years can be seen the raw human side of Dale Evans, very distant from the shined image of the Western star she was bound to be. Her fight for survival was only just beginning, and it would take more than talent to rewrite her destiny. Reinventing herself in radio and Hollywood. As Frances Octavia Smith continued her struggle to provide for herself and her young son, she began to find her voice, literally, through radio. Working at stations like WMC and WREC in Memphis, she sang and played piano, gradually earning a small but loyal audience. Her talent for jazz, swing, and big band music stood out, catching the attention of industry insiders. Despite her modest beginnings, Frances's determination to succeed in music remained unwavering, and she soon found herself climbing the ranks of radio entertainment during the 1930s. A pivotal moment came when she landed a job at a radio station in Louisville, Kentucky, WHS. There, a station manager suggested that Frances Smith was too plain and difficult to market. He proposed a more memorable stage name, Dale Evans. It was catchy, Western-sounding, and easy to pronounce. Frances embraced the change, believing that a new name might open new doors. It did. Dale Evans quickly became her professional persona, giving her a fresh start in a world that valued image as much as talent. Hollywood took notice right away. Dale's vocal talent warranted a screen test and a contract with 20th Century Fox. Her public image was molded to fit that wholesome all-American status, but the studio insisted that she conceal the fact that her already well-kempt persona was that of a single mother. In a rude and painful decision, Dale agreed to have her teenage son, Tommy, pass for her younger brother. It was this lie that was fashioned to protect her career and ended up causing tremendous emotional damage to her. Dale would later confess that the lie plagued her, especially with growing fame, and she was haunted by the veracity of that lie. The burden was heavy because of the lie, and it was indicative of the stringent measures set upon women in early Hollywood. Dale was destined to live double lives in her fame, all the while conscious that in one sense, her existence relied on a charade. Nevertheless, she moved forward as an accomplished singer and actress, an icon of strength and fortitude. Contrary to simply changing her name, the metamorphosis of Frances Smith into Dale Evans spoke of her will to survive in a merciless industry. This time in her life defined the building blocks for the strong, complex woman that she would eventually become. 3 marriages before Roy Rogers. Before Dale Evans found lasting love with Roy Rogers, her journey through romantic relationships was marked by heartbreak, instability, and deep emotional trials. Her first marriage, at just 14 years old, was to Thomas Frederick Fox. The relationship was short-lived and deeply painful. Fox abandoned her shortly after the birth of their son, Thomas Jr. Left alone in Memphis, Dale, then still known as Frances, was forced to raise her child while trying to survive financially. This early experience of abandonment would profoundly shape her emotional resilience and the way she approached future relationships. In 1929, after officially divorcing Fox, Dale entered her second marriage with August Wayne Johns. Little is known publicly about the details of this relationship, but it ended in 1935, leaving no children and seemingly little lasting joy. During this time, Dale was still working hard to build her career in radio and music, and the emotional toll of another failed marriage added to the pressures she already faced as a single mother and aspiring performer. The end of her second marriage confirmed a pattern of instability in her personal life, even as her professional prospects slowly improved. In 1937, Dale Butts married for the third time, a musician and arranger, Robert Dale Butts, who collaborated closely with her in music. This partnership was a lot professional than romantic. Although they bonded creatively, their personal relationship was devoid of the passion and desirability of compatibility, which are essential for the longer lasts. By 1946, they were divorced, making Dale's third shot at a longer marriage defunct. Nonetheless, it was a failure. The marriage to Butts elevated her musical career rather than simply adding to her disappointment, offering new avenues in the entertainment industry that led to even greater developments in her artistic style. Early marriages were more than just a lot of broken marriages. They were actually what Dale went through on learning to cope between his soothing self and ambitious enterprise. Each of the broken unions left some scars, but also contributed to building the strong, self-independent woman that one day would become. The pain that went through with those early romances, well compounded by the social stigma of being a single mother, accompanied by all the spells of loneliness resulting from being left, women gave her no option but to learn how to be very strong in herself. However, it was only after the scars of those ills that she met Roy Rogers, a partner who would eventually match her in life and business. Hollywood's pressure. As Dale Evans's career began to take off in the 1930s and early 1940s, Hollywood offered her the fame and platform she had long dreamed of. But it came at a heavy personal cost. After being signed to a contract with 20th Century Fox, Dale was thrust into the studio system, which tightly controlled the public images of its stars. For Dale, a single mother who had given birth at 15, the studios saw her real-life story as a threat to the wholesome, all-American girl image they were crafting for her. To protect her rising stardom, the executives made a calculated decision. Her teenage son, Tommy, would publicly be presented as her younger brother. This lie was not a one-time statement, but a long-standing cover-up that Dale was forced to maintain throughout the most public years of her early career. In interviews, studio press releases, and fan interactions, she had to speak of her son as a sibling, effectively denying the truth of one of the most defining relationships in her life. The emotional weight of this deception was immense. Dale later admitted that this falsehood haunted her, not just because it was dishonest, but because it separated her publicly from the child she loved the most. It stripped her of the right to fully own her identity as a mother, something she had fought for since her teen years. The emotional burden grew even heavier with the years, as Tommy saw his very mother, in public situations, refer to him as her brother. Dale and Tommy both understood professionally the need for the charade, but personally, it had been a heavy burden to bear. Behind those smiles and sequined cowgirl outfits, guilt over hiding the truth weighed heavily on Dale's conscience. The ruse served as a metaphor for the sacrifices women in early Hollywood were expected to make, especially if their real lives didn't conform to the glamorized images the studios wanted to sell. It was only after her marriage to Roy Rogers in 1947 that Dale was finally ready to come clean. With Roy's blessing, she admitted publicly that Tommy was in fact her son and not her brother, a revelation that offered both relief and sorrow. Relief that the secret was no longer a secret, and sorrow that the truth was finally out. Although coming clean helped Dale regain a fragment of herself, it also dredged up all those years of emotional suppression and the aching pains of motherhood. This was the moment that heralded a turning point in her life and career in favor of truth. But the open wound of having concealed such an important truth would brand her for life. The Roy Rogers Union. Dale Evans's fourth and final marriage to Roy Rogers marked the most significant and enduring chapter of her life, both personally and professionally. The two met while filming the 1944 movie Cowboy and the Señorita, and their on-screen chemistry quickly translated into real-life affection. After a year of starring together in multiple westerns, they married on New Year's Eve in 1947 at the Flying L Ranch in Davis, Oklahoma. By then, both had been through failed marriages. This was Roy's third and Dale's fourth, but together, they formed a bond that went far beyond Hollywood's usual standards of romance. As partners in both work and life, Roy and Dale became America's favorite cowboy couple. From 1951 to 1957, they co-starred in The Roy Rogers Show, which became a staple of early television. Dale, riding her buckskin horse Buttermilk, complemented Roy's heroism with grace, compassion, and a strong moral compass. Their performances offered more than just entertainment. They consistently promoted messages of family, faith, and virtue. Dale's influence on the show went beyond her role as sidekick. She often introduced spiritual themes and encouraged audiences to hold on to hope and faith during difficult times. The marriage was filled with its own joys and sorrows. In 1950, their first child together, Robin Elizabeth, was born. Sadly, Robin, who was born with Down syndrome, died before reaching her second birthday. Dale turned her sorrow into a calling, authoring Angel Unaware and advancing the cause of awareness and compassion toward children with developmental disabilities. Together with Roy, Dale adopted 4 other children, Mimi, Dodie, Andy, and Debbie, and so these children constituted a big, blended family. Though they had demanding careers, they took parenthood very seriously, sharing values that allowed for a stable and faith-oriented home environment. The story was always glamorized by the fans, but, of course, also had its share of hard times. In her later years, Dale confessed to the difficulties of being married to a man who was as dedicated to his work as Roy. She spoke of the emotional strain Roy's frequent absences put upon their marriage and the toll of his harsh discipline on their children, yet it was always with a loving eye that she talked about him and their marriage. The two were married for over 50 years until Roy's passing in 1998, when Dale remained with him until the end. Their legacy as a power couple in the West remains to this day not only in film and television history, but also in the lives they touched through their advocacy, music, and enduring message of faith and family. Just when life seemed full of promise, heartbreak struck again. Robin's death and Dale's mission. In 1950, Dale Evans and Roy Rogers welcomed their only biological child together, Robin Elizabeth Rogers. What should have been a joyous milestone in their marriage quickly turned into one of the deepest sorrows of their lives. Robin was born with Down syndrome, a diagnosis that, in the 1950s, carried a heavy social stigma. Doctors at the time even advised the couple to institutionalize her, but Dale and Roy refused. Instead, they chose to love and care for Robin at home, embracing her as a cherished member of their growing family. This decision, rare for the era, reflected their deep commitment to their Christian values and family-centered life. Tragically, Robin's life was heartbreakingly short. She died just before her 2nd birthday due to complications related to her condition. Dale was devastated. The loss of her daughter marked a profound emotional turning point, plunging her into a season of grief unlike anything she had experienced before. But even amid that heartbreak, Dale found purpose. She began to see Robin's brief life as a divine assignment, a way to inspire change in how the world viewed children with developmental disabilities. Instead of retreating in sorrow, Dale turned her personal pain into a powerful mission of advocacy. In 1953, Dale published the highly emotional book Angel Unaware, as imagined from Robin's perspective in heaven. The book was not just a memorial, but a spiritual and emotional argument for humanizing children with special needs. It became a bestseller, helping shift public attitudes at a time when developmental disabilities were taboo or silenced. Dale used the success of the book to further her public platform, advocating for compassionate care, inclusion, and dignity for every child, regardless of ability. Her voice gave strength to thousands of families facing similar circumstances. Dale's activism had far-reaching consequences. Her work was instrumental in the establishment and ongoing support of organizations for people with disabilities. One such organization, the Oklahoma County Council for Mentally Retarded Children, was renamed in her honor as the Dale Rogers Training Center in recognition of her lifelong struggle to improve the lives of people through education and community support. From grief, Dale found grace, and she made that grace into a cause for all her days. In opening her heart to tell Robin's story, she pierced the silence surrounding disability and bore witness that even the briefest of lives can have a magnificent impact. Faith and fame. As Dale Evans matured both personally and professionally, her deep Christian faith became central to her identity. Following the deaths of her daughters Robin and Debbie, Dale's beliefs became not just a source of comfort, but a guiding force in her life and work. Rather than separating her spirituality from her celebrity, she chose to integrate faith into her public persona. Whether through her music, books, or television appearances, Dale consistently used her platform to share messages of hope, redemption, and trust in God's plan. Her audiences came to know her not just as a talented entertainer, but as a woman of strong convictions and deep compassion. Of course, their faith is most visible through The Roy Rogers and Dale Evans Show, a 1960s Western variety show, often featuring moralizing and spiritual-themed dimensions. Dale Evans was not shy to express her Christian beliefs broadcasting, which was indeed a joint venture for mainstream entertainers during the time. Nearly all performances included gospel songs, and she would finish up with poignant messages about God, family, or the ability to overcome. She was a contributing factor in Hollywood as a person whose faith and fame never made her compromise her values, even in an environment often dispiriting to overt religious expression. Due to her convictions, Dale became politically active. One such event in her activism was in the year 1964 when she pronounced a bold public statement during national controversies about school prayer. After the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that made mandatory prayer in public schools unconstitutional, Dale was present at the Project Prayer Rally in Los Angeles' Shrine Auditorium, where she spoke for religious freedom and the incorporation of Christian teachings in education. Standing before an audience of 2,500 attendees, she urged Americans to stand up and be counted in defense of their faith. Dale later supported conservative presidential candidate Barry Goldwater, whose platform matched her beliefs on faith, family, and traditional American ideals. In her later years, Dale continued to write inspirational books and record religious numbers as a spiritual mentor to many fans. The titles, which generally dwelt on conquering grief and clinging on to faith despite adversity, would resonate with people outside the Western genre. Fame for Dale was not the destination. It was just the means to go to the end, an end that consists of communicating a message of love, faith, and moral clarity. Even when the entertainment world was changing, she remained a stable voice rooted in belief, using her celebrity not just to entertain, but to uplift and inspire. The loss of daughter Debbie. In 1964, Dale Evans and Roy Rogers faced yet another devastating loss that would deeply scar their family. Their 12-year-old adopted daughter, Debbie, was slain in a horrific church bus accident. The crash occurred during what was supposed to be a joyful church outing, a safe, faith-centered event that reflected the values Dale and Roy worked so hard to instill in their children. The bus lost control and crashed, claiming Debbie's life and leaving Dale and Roy shattered. Having already endured the painful death of their daughter Robin a decade earlier, the couple found themselves once again plunged into unimaginable grief. Debbie's death was especially crushing for Dale. She had welcomed the child into their family with unconditional love, hoping to provide a stable and nurturing home. The sudden and tragic nature of the accident haunted Dale. She often described it as one of the darkest moments of her life, revealing in later reflections that she was consumed by guilt and sorrow. Dale questioned whether she could have done something, anything, to prevent the tragedy. The pain of burying yet another child added to the emotional toll that years of public life, family challenges, and personal loss had already taken on her. After the tragedy of Debbie's demise, Dale, along with Roy, made what they termed a life-changing decision. They sold their favorite ranch spread that covered 300 acres in Chatsworth, California. So many joyful and sad memories associated with this property. They shifted to Apple Valley at Double R Bar Ranch for another new beginning, away from the haunting memories of their loss. Yet, in the fresh environment, Dale found herself chained to Debbie's apparitions and death. Dale dedicated all her energies to work and continued to speak and write openly about grief, faith, and the difficult journey to healing. Dale's tone grew harsher and more painfully raw, emerging from a woman who has lived through pain but continues to strive for its significance. This bereavement deepened Dale's spiritual strength even more. While she never said she understood the whys concerning such losses, she kept insisting on God's plan even through suffering. Her willingness to talk about Debbie's death, rather than trying to cover it in some dazzling veneer of celebrities, has helped many others struggling through their own grief. In public appearances, books, and her religious broadcasts, Dale remained committed to her work of bringing hope. Debbie's life and untimely death were, despite the grief, yet another chapter in Dale's larger tale that illustrated the power of faith in the most difficult tribulations that life has to offer. In honoring Debbie's memory, Dale would often say that pain was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a deeper calling. Her courage to grieve in the open became a quiet revolution for others who had suffered in silence. Holding on through the heartache. To the outside world, Dale Evans and Roy Rogers represented the perfect American couple. Devoted, faith-filled, and in harmony on and off screen. For decades, they starred together in films and television shows, promoted family values, and were seen as the epitome of marital success. But in her later years, Dale began to share a more nuanced and honest portrait of their marriage, revealing that behind the public image were hidden struggles and personal regrets. While she always spoke with respect and admiration for Roy, she acknowledged that their union, like any, came with its own emotional toll. One of the major challenges Dale faced was Roy's frequent absence due to his demanding career. Whether filming, performing, or touring, Roy was often away from home, and Dale was left to manage the household and care for their children, biological and adopted, largely on her own. This created moments of deep loneliness for Dale, particularly as she was also juggling the expectations of her public life and ongoing grief from the loss of their daughters, Robin and Debbie. Though they were partners in many ways, she described long periods where she felt emotionally isolated despite being in a celebrated marriage. Dale also experienced the pressure of existing under the public eye. To Rogers Evans, everything had to portray power, love, and togetherness, meaning that their weaknesses, their woes surrounding disagreements, co-parenting efforts, and emotional estrangement were hidden from the eyes of fans and the media. Dale mentioned that Roy could be a strict father to his kids, and she supported his need for order and principles. Yet it created tension in their blended family at times. These knots notwithstanding, their faith and commitment to each other saw them through. The greatest personal regret for Dale, very perhaps, was the lie she had upheld for years, that her son Tommy was her brother. Even after having publicly corrected the narrative, she said that the pretense over the years had left a scar she never truly healed from. The emotional toll of having kept that secret, compounded with the burden of a perfect marriage, created lifelong inner conflict for Dale. But not once did she let the memory of her love for Roy fade. She stayed with him until his demise in 1998, and her later reflections revealed a woman who had suffered greatly, learned great lessons, and ultimately found a way to embrace the beautiful and broken aspects of her own life story. In a rare interview, Dale once said, "The greatest romances aren't perfect. They're just real enough to survive the storms." This honest reflection colored the carefully curated image that fans saw on screen. Her willingness to share these private struggles helped to reshape public perception about celebrity marriages. demonstrating that vulnerability, especially from someone so widely admired, can be a quiet act of courage. Even after all the pain, Dale found a way to turn her scars into something lasting. Legacy of love and advocacy. Though best known as the glamorous cowgirl alongside Roy Rogers, Dale Evans's legacy extended far beyond the silver screen. In the years following her rise to fame, Dale became a prolific author, penning more than 24 books that reflected her deep Christian faith, personal struggles, and unwavering belief in hope and healing. Titles like Angel Unaware, inspired by the life and death of her daughter Robin, resonated with countless families coping with grief, disability, and loss. Through her writing, Dale transformed her own hardships into a ministry of comfort, offering vulnerable, faith-based guidance that touched hearts across generations. In the 1970s and beyond, Dale continued to use her platform for faith-based outreach. She recorded multiple solo gospel albums and later launched a religious television program that allowed her to share messages of encouragement and belief with a national audience. Her programming emphasized compassion, perseverance, and God's grace, core themes that mirrored her personal life. Even as trends in television and music evolved, Dale's message remained steady and relevant to those seeking strength during difficult times. Her voice, gentle yet firm in conviction, became a source of spiritual support for many who had never met her in person. One of Dale Evans's greatest legacies is her devotion to persons with developmental disabilities. After losing Robin, Dale became a national spokesperson for children with special needs at a time when such issues were frequently stigmatized or neglected. Through her tireless work, she managed to enlighten some of the public's misconceptions and change some of the standards of care. The Dale Rogers Training Center in Oklahoma, named for her, exemplifies her everlasting imprint by educating, engaging, and training individuals with disabilities and providing them with support services. Dale's tireless efforts were, however, not performative. Rather, they were firmly rooted in giving dignity and a voice to the most vulnerable. Dale Evans has also cast a long cultural shadow. Inducted into both the National Cowgirl Museum and Hall of Fame and the Western Performers Hall of Fame, this recognition loftily exalted her contributions to entertainment with a pioneering spirit. Her duet with Roy, Happy Trails, grew up to be more than just a closing song. It became a giver of hope and an affirmation of the couple's enduring optimism and philosophy of life. She is felt through her family, especially her children, who continue preserving and promoting the Rogers-Evans legacy. At the end, Dale Evans proved that genuine stardom can manifest in empowering others and loving leadership, rather than just in the limelight. Dale's influence reached beyond the bounds of the culture to become a part of the conversation in American society about motherhood, femininity, and the role of women in public life. During a time when female celebrities were expected to maintain polished, scandal-free images, Dale dared to speak about grief, regret, and spiritual endurance, matters that, until her, remained largely unexplored by women artists in Hollywood. With her candid commentaries in books such as Time Out for Parents and God is My Life, she challenged the existing discourse by giving voice to a faith-oriented woman who was vulnerable yet strong. Historian Emily C. Neff summarized it well when she said that Dale Evans gave women permission to lead with faith while confronting life's deepest wounds. Dale Evans's voice began shaping a newly interjected understanding of strength that accommodated tenderness, transparency, and emotional sincerity. Thanks for watching. If Dale Evans's story moved you, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories. And don't go just yet. Click the next video on your screen to uncover another powerful chapter from the golden age of the West. See you there.